Okay, we're just gonna go through each of these and just talk about it a little bit, and I'd like you to Google it and look for YouTube videos or things like that. I'll talk about it as well to help explain it further for you. Udam, go ahead and read into part A.
2A. Light and natural light, ambient, existing, low light, such as at night, and artificial light, such as from a flash.
Okay, so let's talk about the issue of light here real quick. So inside a building like we are right now, we have, these are LED lights, but in the past there were fluorescent lights in there, and they actually operate. So first of all, it's darker inside a room than it is outside. So that means you want to adjust your aperture, which is the amount of space that you allow the light to come through this. And so that's called an f-stop on here, and that allows the light to open up. So let me tell you just something about that. If you were inside, like right now we're actually using a zoom lens, which is probably not ideal, but we're going to go ahead and use it. And then maybe here I'll switch it to another lens so you can see the difference on that too. But a zoom lens like this actually has multiple lenses in here. And for every lens that's inside of here, you are restricting the amount of light that can get through. So over here we have a real small lens. Can you show me that one here? So this lens is a 50 millimeter, I believe. And this is a fixed lens. So this one you can't, all you can do of this is adjust the focus. You can't adjust the lens because it's a fixed lens. This one is a telephoto lens, which means you can adjust it for zooming in, zooming out, you can adjust it. But this has a lot more lenses, so inside, this is very difficult to use. And this one, specifically, is a 55 to 300. It's basically pointless for here. I use this for taking pictures of wildlife and people that are far away. Like if I want to get a zoom of somebody's nose from across the road, this is the one I use. Or if I want to take pictures of birds that are up in trees and you can't even see them, literally I can see them through this clearer than I can see them with my own eye. You can see their colors and things like that. But this lens, because it's a fixed lens, we don't adjust it, so more light can come in here. So for inside a building like we are now, this is a good lens, but this is a 50 millimeter lens. This is used for portraits, so taking pictures of somebody's face. So the reason why I'm using this lens I'm using right now on the camera, even though it doesn't allow as much light through, is because I can open up the picture and I can get more light in. So inside a building, there's not as much light. If you're taking a video like we're doing now, you have to make sure you adjust the frames per minute. And the frames per minute can sometimes, we can't see with our naked eye, but these lights are literally blinking off and on, off and on, off and on. We can't see it with our naked eye, but they're actually blinking off and on and off and on. Well, if you set your camera, which happens to be at the same frequency as the lights are blinking off and on, your whole picture will be like somebody switching the lights off and on, off and on, off and on, off and on. One time I did a video project almost 2 weeks long of recording videos, and we didn't go back to look at the videos until afterwards, and every shot that was done inside a building was like blinking off and on, off and off and on, because the cycles were the same in my camera as they were in the light bulbs, and it's not visible to the naked eye, but actually these lights are blinking. Outside, you don't have that problem. And so actually, on a bright sunny day, the amount of light that's coming in is massive, the amount of light. And so pictures actually tend to not look that good, although the sky pictures look nicer when there's a blue sky, or actually with a few clouds in the sky, it looks really nice. But on a cloudy day is when you get the colors better, when it's a little cloudy, but outside. So you have to be aware of where you are, the different kinds of lights you have, to be able to know which lens to use and what camera to use too. And then on your small cameras, you can change the settings so that you can allow for more light in, or to change the exposure. You know, on a phone, you can touch the screen and it'll it'll show like a sun picture, and you can adjust it up or down, and it adjusts for the amount of light that comes in, and so it makes the picture look different that way. And so that's with light. Why don't you read B, and let's just talk about that one a little bit. And please Google this, guys. Google this so you can learn more.
2B, exposure, aperture, f-stops, shutter speed, and ISO.
Okay, so we talked about that earlier. On this camera, all of this is a Nikon camera, and you'll see all these lenses are Nikon or adjusted for Nikon. So if you have a Canon, a big camera like this, if you have a Canon, all your lenses will have to be Canon. If you have a Nikon, like this is Nikon, and this is my third Nikon, lenses are very expensive, and so I would probably not buy anything other than Nikon because I have thousands of dollars worth of lenses, and if I change to a Canon, I would have to change all of these as well too, so I'm not going to do that, so I'm going to keep shooting. And the reason why I still use, even though most pictures I take nowadays are with smaller cameras or with cell phones, because it's easier to carry one. And for this project that we're doing for this merit badge, if you have a big camera, you can use that, and you can get better pictures that way. If you just have a cell phone and you just want to use a cell phone, that's fine as well. You can adjust it. You can switch over to the Pro settings on a phone, and it's not really the same like this kind of camera, but you can adjust things like the aperture, which is how much light is coming through, or the f-stops, and so you can adjust it. And then so many people, of course, just shoot with these big cameras on full auto, and which is the automatic setting, and it adjusts for you. And actually, it does a fantastic job adjusting. But then, if you wanna change it, so for example, a waterfall. So at a waterfall, I go to speed. I go to the speed setting, and that's the shutter speed. And I can adjust the shutter speed. I change to a manual setting of S, which is shutter speed, and then I adjust it inside the screen here. And as I'm looking through, I can adjust it. So if I have a really fast shutter screen, or for example, when Adam was playing soccer, I would use a very fast shutter speed, and you could make the ball stop on his foot if you wanted to. But if your shutter speed is slower, then that means it opens up and closes. In that time, the ball is come and gone. Or with a waterfall, for example, the water looks beautiful. That makes it look like it's like a curtain of water that's coming down if you have a slower shutter speed. Where if it's a faster shutter speed, it just looks like the waterfall's frozen. You'll see like dots of water and that kind of stuff, instead of a beautiful cascading waterfall. So there are different effects that you can use for each one, but you can adjust all that. So aperture is the A on here, and aperture adjusts your f-stops for letting in more light or less light. The darker it gets outside, the more light you need to let in. The lighter it is outside, the tighter you need to make it. So you need to make the f-stops you need to reduce the hold down, the aperture hold down, so that you can let less light in, because it'll overexpose your picture. And by overexposing a picture, it just turns white. If it's underexposed, your picture just is black. That means it just didn't do anything to it. It's just naturally black. So it just came out and you didn't get anything. So you can also adjust that according to whatever you want. When I grew up doing photography, we had to use film. And so when we used film, when we would go and take a picture, we wouldn't have any idea what that picture looked like until we took it into a lab, or we produced it ourselves and we developed it ourselves. We'd go into what we call a dark room, and we would spend hours in there developing the negatives and then developing each picture one by one, so that we could see what we did, and then we could go back and make changes. So it was a lot more difficult today. Now it's so easy. You can make adjustments on the fly, and then you can see your results instantly in your camera, although if it's on a bigger screen, it's easier to see. Okay? All right, let's go ahead and read the next one. The next C, I believe.
Yeah. To C, depth of field.
Depth of field. So depth of field means how far away your image is. And so different apertures and different f-stops also, but especially the aperture, you can adjust the depth of field. So with this kind of camera, if I were taking a picture of Udam right in front of me, Udam would be, I would adjust this, Udam would be in focus, and mostly, because of the way these small cameras work, everything behind him would also be in focus as well. And so it's just one way to have a picture. If I use this kind of a camera and I change my aperture and my focus, I can change the depth of field so where it's not including everything in focus, but I can focus literally just on his nose if I wanted to. And so I could make his face completely in focus, and then everything behind him and everything in front of him be blurred. And that has a really good effect, because you want your subject to be in focus. And if everything's in focus, the picture doesn't really stand out at you that much. But if you can focus just on Udam's face, and then everything else is blurred behind him, and everything is blurred in front of him, then with your depth of field, you're able to make the picture so much better. Or for example, if you're taking a picture of some scenery or something, and there's a house, you need to have a subject. Whatever you're taking a picture of, there needs to be a subject. If you just like popping pictures everywhere, they're not good to look at, and they're not interesting to look at. And so we'll talk about the rule of thirds here in a minute. But you need to have a subject. And so you want to make sure, especially, your subject is in focus. And so one of the ways to do that is to understand the depth of field. So like everything we're talking about, please Google these guys so you can see more examples online. There's incredible photographers online that you can learn so much from. I go online all the time to learn new tricks and features and that kind of stuff. Okay, read the next one, Adam. D.
Judy, composition, rule of thirds, leading lines, framing, and depth.
So when you're talking about framing, when you look through here, now most Nikons do not have live frame like when you look at this, you can actually see through this instead of looking through an eye hole. You know, I think this one, no, none of these even have eye holes anymore. The older ones would have an eye hole, but these still have an eye hole that you can look through. And so with a Nikon, you still have to look through these holes. And the reason why they do that is so that you can frame. It means you put everything within that, and you can see exactly the picture you want to take through that hole. Sometimes when you're sitting back like that, you can still frame it, but you can do it a whole lot better through here. Now sometimes it's awkward to do that, and they do have another feature now called Live View, where you can switch over to Live View and it puts it on a screen behind there as well. But when I set that picture and I fire it, now I switched it over to aperture then. And so it adjusted my shutter speed, because there's not much light in here, it adjusted the shutter speed to be able to take that picture. So the picture is very blurry, I can tell you all that, because anything less than 1/60th of a second, the camera actually picks up your heartbeat, your movement from your heartbeat. So even though you're trying to be as still as you can, and you want to hold the camera, you want to hold it against yourself, you want to hold it. Now, especially if you're doing anything like this, you want to use a tripod. So I have the camera that we're using over here. This is actually a camera like this that we're using to take the videos with. It's on a tripod. You want to make sure it's very, very still. But anything less than 1/60th of a second, that picture came out super blurry, because I have it set on manual there, and the shutter speed is super slow to trying to get enough light in there. So the rule of thirds, it's a unique thing. You should Google it and find out. There's something about if you put your subject right in the center of a picture, it's not interesting to the human eye. But if it's off a bit, so you talk about the rule of thirds, you divide your picture into a third. And if it's on one of the thirds, there's just something about it where if it's a little bit angled or whatever, it just draws and it makes it look so much better. So you can Google how people talk about the rule of thirds and how to do that, because it really makes a difference in how people see a picture how they respond to the picture, and how it attracts them to make the picture look really good, is understanding that rule of thirds. And so you can see various examples how people shoot pictures and they use that in the rule of thirds. Okay, go ahead and read the next one there. We'll talk about that a little bit. And like I said, please Google all these things so you can learn more.
2E, angle of view.
Angle of view. So right now, we have stuff on our desk, and so I want to show you, so we have the tripod sitting higher so that we can get an angle of view so that you can see everything on the desk. If I had this at the same level of the desk, you wouldn't be able to see this kind of stuff very well. And so we've changed the angle of view. So depending on how you angle it affects how you view things too. As we're naturally walking, so like for myself, I'm 6 foot tall. So the way I see everything in life is from 6 feet tall. And so I see people or see objects as smaller or shorter, and I see other people as taller or bigger, depending on where I see things as a 6 foot tall person. So if I lay on the ground and I get an angle from another perspective, I can make somebody who normally looks shorter to me look like a giant. You know, we did an angle of view the other time that also deals with depth of view. Udam was fishing, and so I took him to a special place where I knew they would catch fish. But the fish were really, really small. Literally, you'd throw the pole in, 3 seconds later you'd catch a fish. And so I told him to hold the fish on the line, but hold it closer to the camera, and so it made the fish look like this big, when really the fish was only about this big. But the way he holded it, the way I did the angle, and the depth of view also, but the way I did the angle of the shot, it made the fish look like it was gigantic, like it was a whale that he had just pulled out. And actually the fish in reality was only this big. But because of the angle of view, I had him adjust how he held it in relation to his body, and how I held my camera, it made it look like a gigantic fish. So we're still hoping to catch the gigantic one though. But there's all kinds of things you can do with cameras to make pictures and to make the subject stand out more. And so angle of view is one of those. Okay, read the next one. F, I believe.
2F, stop action and blur motion.
So stop action and blurred motion, that's what I was talking about with like when you're shooting photography or shooting sports especially, or waterfalls and things like that. So the faster shutter speed, you stop the action, and with the slower shutter speed, you blur the action. And so we talked about that a little bit earlier in terms of waterfalls and things like that. You can do like where you can put a pin into a balloon, and you can put a pin into a balloon, and as soon as you put the pin in, it'll pop. But if you have a super high shutter speed on, and the way to do it is take a video, and you can stop it that way. But if you had a super high shutter speed, you could literally stick the pin in there, and it would look like the pin is piercing it, but not popping the balloon. And it's because you captured it so fast that it didn't have chance to blow up yet. And so you can make things look like that. You can make things with a fast shutter speed. You can make objects look like they're sitting on somebody, like a basketball sitting on somebody's head, or all kinds of things you can do just with a fast shutter speed. Whereas with blurred motion, you can make a bicycle look like it's a race car, because you could blur it as it's going down the street and make it look like it's going 100 miles an hour, and actually you just change the shutter speed so that it didn't stop the action, but it blurred the action. And so that's something you can do with the photography as well. Okay, what's the next one?
2G, decisive moment, action or expression captured by the photographer.
Okay, so on these kind of cameras here, you can do burst, and actually on a phone you have burst speed and things like that. So if you're taking a picture, people's bodies are always moving, the subject that you're usually shooting. If you're shooting animals, for example, they're not going to listen to you, so you may have to shoot 40 or 50 pictures to get one good one. And so you can catch their expression a certain way, or you can catch an emotion a certain way by shooting more pictures. And so sometimes if you have a subject that moves a lot, or you're trying to get something specific, you probably want to use a burst feature where you can get more pictures. in 1 second it can do 3 to 5 pictures sometimes, and sometimes even more than that. Sometimes it'll do 30 in a minute or something like that, or in a second, 30 shots in a second. And then you can check your pictures to see which one captures the emotion or captures what you're trying to get about. It expresses emotion that way when you do that. So you can do that. Okay, go ahead and go with the next one there.
That's it.
All right, that's it. So we're gonna take a break here, and then I want all you guys to look at those again and then Google those so that you can find examples online of each of those different things so that you can learn about that. And remember my question that I asked you. Remember my question, does a GPS work underwater? Okay? I want you to answer that in a private message, okay? Or in an email to me, okay? All right, let's, we're going to shut this off now, and then just a minute we'll continue with the other requirements on the merit badge. I'll just explain those to you. All right.